Story recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a drama, horror, and mystery film called The Feast. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. In Wales, a group of miners drill through a particular spot in the field. Then, one of the miners staggers before falling to the ground, his ears bleeding. Meanwhile, a wealthy family starts to prepare for a lovely dinner party that they offer to host for their guests. The mother of the household, Glenda, enlists the help of Katie, a colleague of their helper who couldn't come to work that day. While Guttu chops logs outside, he spots Katie standing by the gate and lets her in, saying that Glenda, his mother, is worried that she wouldn't come. Glenda then greets her and says that she's late, and while closing the gate, the blade of Guttu's axe suddenly falls on his foot, giving him a small cut. Immediately, Glenda orders her to start setting the table, putting the white tablecloth to use. Then, the sound of 2 loud gunshots takes Katie by surprise, deeply upsetting her. Glenda comes to check on Katie's work and sees that the tablecloth is stained with mud, and while she quickly suspects that it's Katie's doing, no trace of dirt is found on her arms. When Katie starts to admire the painting in the house, Gwired catches her by surprise with a loud sound coming from his blender, and it's obvious that he's interested in her. Gwired then mentions to Glenda that he can't join for dinner because he has a strict diet for his triathlon training. However, Glenda says that it's an important dinner, so his father will stop sponsoring his triathlon business if he doesn't show up. After meeting Katie, Gwired then takes a bath and shaves his private area, accidentally cutting himself. Meanwhile, Katie is satisfied with her final work setting the table, but Glenda isn't. The glasses don't match, and Katie puts a vase of flowers as a centerpiece, which Glenda didn't tell her to do. Although Katie is about to restart her work, Glenda tells her that it'll do. While they cut fruits together, Glenda reminisces about her old days before she was rich and still lived on a farm. She mentions how she keeps her old mementos from her old home, yet doesn't use them because they don't fit her new house, saying it feels primitive. When Glenda's husband, Gwyn, a parliament member, comes home with 2 dead rabbits, Katie immediately freaks out. She is scared by his hunting rifle and refuses to accept that he just killed innocent animals. Gwyn says that he caught the rabbits himself, although the truth is that he already found the rabbits hung by a tree moments prior. Katie runs outside in distress and is consoled by Gwired, who says that even though his father likes to hunt and boasts about it, he really won't hurt people. Then, before walking away, Gwired mentions that there's something on Katie's shirt. When she goes back inside the house, Glenda wonders if she's vegetarian or perhaps simply ill. She also notices the mud stains on Katie's shirt, so she tells her to borrow a white shirt from her closet. Katie starts changing clothes and fixes herself up in the mirror, even trying on some of Glenda's accessories and laughing to herself. Gwyn encounters Katie when she walks out of the bedroom and apologizes for scaring her earlier. He says that he wants to be friends with her, but Katie ignores him. Then, when Katie walks away, a sudden ringing in his ear makes Gwyn clutch it in pain. Katie goes back to preparing dinner and works on the canopies, singing an old folk song while doing so. Glenda notices this and starts feeling nostalgic, saying that she hasn't heard that song in a long while. They delightfully sing together until Gwyn returns, complimenting Katie's voice. Glenda's expression suddenly changes because of her husband's remark, but she doesn't say a word about it and just makes him find a lighter. Thinking that Guttu probably has a lighter, Gwyn goes and searches in his room immediately. Guttu sees him rummaging through his stuff and confronts him about it, and the two share a conversation about Guttu's inclination to drugs, with Gwyn saying that Guttu can only return to London if he changes. Upset, Guttu tells Gwyn that he should share some of the blame because both he and his brother Gwired turned out to be disappointments to the family. After a while, Katie and Guttu start talking to each other. Guttu mentions his old life back in London, filled with parties, clubs, and drinking. Although his parents are trying to get him to be better, Guttu exaggerates that he might kill his parents if he doesn't take any substances soon. He then asks Katie if she could help him with this problem. So, without saying a word, she gestures for Guttu to follow her into the woods, where she produces mushrooms for him. When Katie returns, their first guest, Euros, arrives and greets her rather pompously, implying that she's slacking because she's only sitting outside. Then, suddenly, Euros accidentally drops an expensive bottle of wine he brought for dinner and gets angry. Ordered by Gwyn to clean up the mess, Katie checks the shards of glass and takes one, putting it inside her private area. Inside the house, Gwyn tells Guttu to call Gwired to promptly greet the guest. Guttu, feeling miserable in his current situation, tells Gwired that they could just go back to London together, but his brother ignores him and instead says that he saw Katie and him together in the woods. Gwired automatically assumes that they did something inappropriate, even asking the details of what they allegedly did, but Guttu just looks at his brother in disgust and walks away. In the living room, Euros enjoys a canopy offered by Katie, only to start pulling out chunks of hair from his mouth. Then, before dinner, Euros shows Gwyn a chart of their industrial excavations. He mentions a postponed project that morning because a worker fell ill, adding that their drill went so deep that they found a mysterious cave beneath. Euros also says that it's a discovery because there are no records of caves within the area. A few minutes later, their last guest, Mayor, arrives. Mayor mentions to Glenda that her husband couldn't come because he went to help the police retrieve a car that had been driven into a lake. Mayor and Candy know each other, but when Mayor offers her condolences for her deceased father, Katie doesn't respond. Glenda tells Katie to prepare the first course, and she starts retching on the food as she sees it. Nonetheless, she serves it anyway. In his room, Guto's wound worsens, so he starts eating the mushroom that Katie gave him earlier. Once Gwyrdd goes out to greet the guests, Mayor talks to him about his bicycle racing, so his parents mention that he's training for an upcoming triathlon, which is why he quit being a doctor. Outside, Katie lies down on the ground, and blades of grass start to slither and wrap around her body. Over dinner, Katie serves everyone their meals but gets the wrong meal for Gwyrdd's diet. Gwyrdd's meal is in a different container, which Katie serves upon Glenda's instruction, and Guto feels disgusted when he sees that his meal is just chunks of raw meat. Because of his rude reaction, Gwyn tells Guto to go back to his room, which he does, but not without a few complaints. Again, Guto starts eating the mushrooms from Katie, and he even boils them to inject them into himself. Back at the dinner table, Euros and Gwyn bring up the topic of wanting to have rights to Mayor's farm so that they can mine their land for resources. However, Mayor is adamant about keeping their farmland intact even at the promise of huge profit. Although they're in a tight financial situation, Mayor would rather put her values first rather than sell the land to Euros. Amid their conversation, Gwyrdd starts choking on something, so Gwyn tries helping by firmly patting his back. Unfortunately, this doesn't make much of a difference, so Katie walks over to get whatever Gwyrdd's choking on and pulls out a thick strand of hair from his throat. Moments later, Glenda thanks Katie for her assistance and tells her that they'll pay her generously for her help that night. She also tells Katie to take a plate to Guto's room because he might be hungry. Then, Glenda accidentally burns her hand when she grabs the tray of food and drops it on the floor, not realizing that it was still hot. When she picks up the fallen bits of food, she notices a trail of dirt that Katie left when she walked away. On the other hand, Katie gets to Guto's room and finds him clutching his leg, groaning in extreme pain on the floor. Guto pleads for Katie to help, but when she tears off his pants to look at the injury, she finds a bloody leg covered with maggots. Without hesitation, Katie starts to lick Guto's leg while he screams in agony. At the dinner table, Gwyn calls Katie over and starts harassing her to sing. And, with slight irritation, she approaches them. Then, once again, Gwyn feels the pain caused by a ringing in his ears when Katie looks at him. Gwyrdd tries to console Katie and they start making out in the hallway. Katie then urges him to follow her into the woods, where she shows him Guto, lying in the grass in extreme pain. Gwyrdd thinks they should call an ambulance, but Katie says it's too late and hands him an axe, implying that he should amputate Guto's injured leg. On the other hand, Guto shouts and reveals that Gwyrdd stopped being a doctor because he took advantage of his patients while they were asleep. Gwyrdd then strikes the axe down on Guto's leg, making Katie smile. Later on, Gwyrdd and Katie make love to each other, and Gwyrdd injures himself on the shard of glass that Katie put inside herself earlier. Meanwhile, Glenda talks to Mayor, still determined to convince her to consider selling her property to Euros. She also mentions that they found something special hidden beneath a place called The Rise, which spreads up to Mayor's farm. Because of this revelation, Mayor gets angry at Glenda for not respecting the superstition of their place, reminding Glenda of the story about The Rise and how it shouldn't be disturbed. They talk about old folklore, and Mayor says that the entity residing there shouldn't be awakened. Mayor then walks out on Glenda, excusing herself from dinner, not even budging once when Euros and Gwyn persuade her to cooperate. A little while later, Mayor returns and reveals to Glenda that the car they pulled from the lake is Katie's, insinuating that whoever is in their house isn't her, but perhaps a supernatural being inhabiting her body. Mayor reminds Glenda about the folklore, saying that in order for the entity to return, it would need a body to live in. On the other hand, a ringing in his ear starts to bother Gwyn once again, but this time it's worse than ever. He starts to crawl into the bathroom in extreme pain as Katie slowly walks towards him with a skewer in hand. Her appearance is much different now, for she is entirely covered in blood. Meanwhile, Euros just continues to eat the food, unbothered. Now that Glenda is aware of the situation, she takes a knife and cautiously searches the house for Katie. She then panics upon seeing Gutto's bloody bed, and as she goes to her room, she finds a floral dress on her bed. Glenda wears the dress and calls out to her sons, and she cries out upon seeing Gwyred carrying a bloody Gutto, screaming about her constantly warning them to never go to the rise. In the shower room, Gwyn lies on Katie's lap in pain and takes the skewer from her hand to try and ease the pain in his ears. However, Katie slowly pierces the entire skewer through his head instead. At the same time, Euros devours the food on the table and doesn't even use utensils. On the other hand, Glenda starts acting a bit strange as she serves Gutto's severed leg to Euros. Moments later, Euros regains consciousness after passing out and sees Glenda pointing a gun at him. She then shoves the end of the gun into his mouth and shoots him, and it isn't long before she starts screaming and runs a knife across her throat. With everyone inside the house dead, Katie drags the bodies into the woods and starts to burn them all. She then walks back into the mining site from earlier, looking up at the sky and smiling before her face of victory turns into an expression of anguish.
This is all for Story Recap for today. Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Tell us in the comments if you want us to recap your favorite movie. Watch other of our videos showing on the screen and leave a like because it helps the channel. And I would see you in the next video. Goodbye.